All right, thanks, Joy. We start our top story check with the latest on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine's president is now criticizing the West ahead of another round of talks between Russian and Ukrainian officials, but this time in Turkey. Meanwhile, the White House is trying to walk back comments President Biden made last week about seeking regime change in Russia. Speaking in Warsaw, Poland, Mr. Biden made waves when he said Russian President Vladimir Putin, quote, cannot remain in power, end quote. The president had used the trip to highlight European unity following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, announcing new sanctions and a plan to reduce Europe's reliance on Russian energy. Ukraine's president signaled he's ready to accept neutrality and to help restore peace, and some Russian demands are on the table that Ukraine will remain free of nuclear weapons. One Ukrainian military official believes Russia is trying to split the country in two, like a North and South Korea. And switching gears now to the latest out of Puerto Rico. This year, Liberty Puerto Rico focused on new strategies to support women in honor of International Women's Month. Breaking stereotypes, gender violence, and creating stars in technology is just part of their new strategies. Our Francis Felix reports.
Breaking with prejudice, gender violence, and creating stars in technology are part of the new strategies of Liberty Puerto Rico to support women talent.
This year's Liberty Puerto Rico campaign theme is Break the Bias, which focuses on eliminating discrimination, stereotypes, and prejudice against women. Liberty was awarded the Textile Equity Award for 2022, which recognized companies with the highest number of job advertisements writing in gender-neutral language in 2021.
For this year's International Women's Day, at Liberty Latin America, that's our parent company for Liberty Puerto Rico, we had three main focus that we had for celebrating or commemorating the day. So one of them was the theme of this year, which was breaking the bias. The other one was gender-based violence and future technology stars. So breaking the bias, and this was this year's pose, refers to those positions or those jobs that are normally thought of as for male employees, and they're being taken over by female employees. Unfortunately, in November of 2019, we lost an employee of ours, media, to the government and the PARE committee. We signed an alliance with PARE committee, and so we use our platforms for their educational programs, Future Technology Stars. In Puerto Rico, we went a step further and we took the program externally, and through our Liberty Foundation and in conjunction with the Eco Exploratorio, we recruited 125 young women from public schools in Puerto Rico to go through the program. It actually started on March 9th, and they are already going through the session, so we are very hopeful that from that cohort we'll get future technology stars in Puerto Rico.
During International Women's Month, Liberty Puerto Rico has made their priority all these efforts and providing education to young women of different public schools in Puerto Rico with the Liberty Foundation. Reporting from Atorrey, Puerto Rico, Francis Felix.
All right, thanks so much for that report, Francis. Meantime, Britain's Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Prince William and Kate, visited Grand Bahama and Abaco Islands to see firsthand the devastation left behind from Hurricane Dorian. That was before completing their Caribbean tour. And today, our One Caribbean News' Deandra Hamilton highlights their time in the territory.
Today, they have done what no other royal has ever done. They visited Grand Bahama and Abaco Islands in the Bahamas, venturing outside of the country's capital of Nassau to see the two northern islands pounded by historic Hurricane Dorian in 2019. The arrival of the duo, who celebrates the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, has been met by audiences lavishing them with sweet memories and sobering messages to take back home. In Belize, in Jamaica, reminders about slavery and colonialism have captured headlines, but more dominant are these fabulous images of an adorable husband and wife who have allowed themselves to be immersed in the culture and charisma of Caribbean people. Anne Marie Davis, First Lady of the Bahamas, had some thoughts.
She's excited about the cultural show downtown, and she asked if I'd be joining. I told her yes after my speaking engagement, and she just loves it. She loved the welcome at the airport. She was very happy with the drive, the coastal ride, coming down the scenic route they took with her. So she liked all that. And we talked about London a bit because I did live there for 4 years. And then the men talked about other things.
So did Prime Minister Philip Davis, who was among the dignitaries greeting the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge upon arrival at the Sir Lyndon Pinling International in Nassau.
Briefly there, his father and I met. We had several conversations about climate change and how small island development states like ourselves could access funding to assist in our mitigation and adaptation. I think it is really timely that he's here to be able to carry back the message that I gave him in respect to our challenges in accessing climate funding.
And a precious little lady is radiant as she presents flowers to Kate. DeAndre Hamilton.
In the meantime, now to the latest on the coronavirus front. In China's biggest city, Shanghai, began a two-stage lockdown. That's as authorities try to control the country's worst COVID-19 outbreak since the pandemic began. The eastern half of the city will stay home for 4 days, and the rest of the city will go into lockdown starting Friday. The new measure comes as state health officials in China reported more than 5,500 locally transmitted COVID cases on Saturday. It was the second consecutive day with more than 5,000 cases. In the meantime, just about all the COVID-19 restrictions are being removed in Trinidad and Tobago, including those safe zones, which means those vaccinated and unvaccinated will now be allowed to mix in areas they were once separated. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley made that announcement over the weekend, even as he stressed that residents need to continue taking precaution. As of yesterday, COVID antigen tests were accepted from vaccinated passengers arriving in the country, replacing the need for a negative PCR test. And from April 4th, many more measures will also be scrapped.
We can do away with the safe zone operations, and we will be required now to continue to wear the face mask in a public place, except if you are on a sporting field, if you are in an environment where you're engaging in physical sporting activity, that would be optional, but there would not be a legal requirement to have your mask on. But other than that, in a public place, like in public transport or in the public place, for the time being, we'll continue to keep the mask on, and we will remove the requirements. All restrictions that existed on going to rivers and beaches and so on, they'll be removed completely. And that will come into effect on the 4th of April.
Now, the Prime Minister added that there will be no limits to public gatherings either, but stressed that Trinidad and Tobago still has to be on guard.
We expect that we will behave responsibly, because I must tell you, even as we are doing this now, coming from where we came from, there are 1 or 2 countries now that are experiencing severe outbreaks of COVID-19 and are required to respond. And there are also mutations still taking place with COVID-19 variants. Fortunately, so far, none of them have posed a threat to negatively change where we are at. But given the biology of these things, it is not impossible that there could be a mutant sometime in the not too distant future, which could change all of this.
In total, more than 3,700 people have died from COVID-19 in Trinidad and Tobago since the virus first surfaced in the Twin Republic back in March of 2020.